Tonight, we step into the world of power, politics, and deadly silence. He's been called a defender, a dictator, a war hero, and a war criminal. But behind the headlines and podiums lie stories of families buried beneath rubble, hospitals turned to ash, and orders given with chilling precision. This is the story of Benjamin Netanyahu and the crimes that shook the world. It begins in the hush of a funeral. Not a funeral of a person, but of a place. In northern Gaza, a family of 6, 4 of them children, are wrapped in white cloth, placed side by side in a row dug hastily behind what was once their home. It had no roof. It had no doors. Because it had been hit by 3 Israeli bombs, fired in sequence from a drone and 2 F-16s. The targets, officials said, were militants. But there were no weapons found in the rubble. Just coloring books, plastic slippers, a baby bottle. The survivors did not scream. They did not protest. They buried their dead in silence as cameras rolled and the Israeli war machine pressed forward. This is where our story begins, in the shadows of silence and steel. Welcome back to True Crime After Dark, where we unravel the darkest corners of power, politics, and the human cost hidden behind official statements and media briefings. Tonight's episode isn't about a lone killer or a hidden crime scene. It's about a man with global influence, a democratic leader accused of systematic brutality on a scale that defies comprehension. His name is Benjamin Netanyahu. And this is the story of what power can do when accountability disappears. Benjamin Netanyahu has ruled over Israel longer than any leader in its history. His rise was relentless. The son of Benjamin Netanyahu, a renowned Zionist historian, Benjamin inherited a legacy of nationalism and intellectual rigor. After serving in the elite Sayeret Matkal commando unit, he studied at MIT and Harvard. By the 1990s, he had already cultivated an image, sharp, media-savvy, and unflinchingly hawkish. But behind the polished suits and American-accented English was a man who built his career on fear. Under Netanyahu's leadership, Israel launched military operations with names that belied their destruction: Operation Cast Lead, Operation Protective Edge, Operation Pillar of Defense. Each incursion into Gaza was framed as a response to Palestinian aggression. But with each campaign, the death toll of civilians, including women, children, the elderly, grew harder to justify. In 2014, during Operation Protective Edge, over 2,200 Palestinians were killed in 50 days. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to ash. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch accused Israel of deliberately targeting civilians and infrastructure, hospitals, UN shelters, schools, families who had nowhere left to run. And at the top of that chain of command was Netanyahu. Amid shattered concrete, mothers search for names and fathers for fragments of home. The war pauses for no one. The city breathes in ash and exhales only quiet, while grief settles like dust across the ruins. Along the coast, blocks of stone replace neighborhoods as waves carry the smell of smoke. Survivors walk paths where streets once ran, holding blankets, photographs, and keys, tokens for doors that no longer exist. October 7, 2023, would become the date etched into Israeli history. On the morning of October 7, 2023, Israel was hit with the deadliest coordinated assault in its modern history. As families slept and towns prepared for the Sabbath, militants from Hamas launched a surprise multi-front attack by land, air, and even motorized paragliders. They breached border fences, stormed civilian neighborhoods, and opened fire at close range. Entire families were massacred in their homes. Over 1,000 people were killed in a matter of hours. Men, women, children, festival-goers, and elderly residents taken hostage or executed on camera. The Israeli military, intelligence agencies, and government were caught off guard in a failure that stunned the world. What followed wasn't just a national tragedy, it became the justification for a war that would redraw global alliances, ignite protest movements, and trigger accusations of crimes against humanity on both sides. It was an atrocity, without question. Families torn apart, children taken hostage, women and men enjoying a music festival were kidnapped, taken hostage, or executed in broad daylight. The world gasped. But then came the retaliation. What followed wasn't simply war, it was siege. Netanyahu's government unleashed what some human rights investigators have called the most sustained and comprehensive attack on a civilian population in modern history. Gaza, already crippled by years of blockade, was choked into near-total collapse. Fuel deliveries ceased. Water was cut off. Power plants went dark. Humanitarian convoys were denied entry. For weeks, doctors operated on children without anesthesia. Thousands died not from bombs, but from lack of medicine, food, or safe shelter. And then came the bombings. Entire residential towers were leveled. Refugee camps turned to craters. Neighborhoods like Shujaiya and Beit Lahia disappeared from maps. Was this strategy or revenge? Leaked documents later obtained by international courts showed that Netanyahu authorized what was referred to as a complete siege policy. Israeli intelligence officials reportedly warned that mass civilian deaths would turn global opinion. But Netanyahu dismissed the concerns. In one closed-door meeting, later leaked by a whistleblower, Netanyahu was recorded saying, "We must teach them a lesson they'll never forget. Gaza must never recover." Intent. The cornerstone of war crime prosecution. Not what happened, but what was meant to happen. And then there's the role of the United States. Washington sent shipments of precision-guided missiles, 155mm artillery shells, and bunker-busting bombs. Over $3.8 billion annually in military aid. As hospitals collapsed, U.S.-made bombs were dropped on Khan Yunis, Rafah, and Jabalia. When global leaders called for a ceasefire, the United States vetoed UN Security Council resolutions 3 times. Was this neutrality or complicity? Meanwhile, on the ground, stories poured out. In Rafah, a mother held the limp body of her infant daughter, her skin burned by white phosphorus. In Gaza City, a journalist live-streamed as his own apartment was shelled, crying out for help that never came. In Nuseirat, children slept in alleys, their homes gone, their parents buried beneath the rubble. These are not war stories. These are war crimes. Across the camp, tents ripple in the wind as families line up for water and medicine. Children search for relatives, elders watch the road. For those waiting here, every hour is about survival, and the world is still watching. By late 2024, pressure mounted. The International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants, not just for Hamas leaders, but for Israeli officials, including Netanyahu. Charges included starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, murder, persecution, and the use of weapons banned under international law. Israel's response was defiance. Netanyahu called the ICC a kangaroo court. He said the warrants were anti-Semitic, a political smear. But behind the defiance, cracks were forming. Veteran Israeli pilots refused orders. Dozens of military reservists signed letters accusing Netanyahu of abandoning Israel's moral compass. Protests surged in Tel Aviv, not just against the war, but against the man leading it. What makes this case different from others isn't just the scale of violence. It's the clarity of command. Unlike previous wars, Netanyahu was fully in control. He chaired every security cabinet meeting. He signed off on bombing campaigns. He blocked aid. He gave the orders. Even more chilling, intelligence sources revealed the use of advanced AI targeting systems powered by U.S. technology to identify strike zones with tolerance for collateral damage. Translation: areas where children lived were marked as acceptable losses. And amid all this, Netanyahu's personal corruption trial resumed. He stands accused of accepting lavish gifts, trading favors with media moguls, and undermining Israel's judiciary. Some believe his decision to escalate the war served a dual purpose: distract from domestic scandal and rally political support through fear. If true, it means thousands of civilians died, not for security, but for survival. His survival. So what now? Netanyahu remains in power. The ICC has no police force. Nations must choose to arrest him if he travels. Few will. The United States has already said it will not cooperate, but history doesn't always need handcuffs to deliver judgment. Sometimes it comes from the mouths of survivors. Sometimes it comes from the empty beds of hospitals turned to ash. And sometimes it comes from the children who lived, who carry the scars, the burns, the silence. In shelters and shattered streets, they wait in lines, pots in hand, eyes hollow, futures on hold. Hunger teaches patience, war teaches silence, the world keeps counting. In these lines, children clutch pots and patience. Relief stalls, futures pause. Hunger whispers where sirens fade, and the world keeps counting, while they wait, silent and steadfast. Benjamin Netanyahu isn't just on trial in The Hague. He's on trial in the hearts of every person who's seen what war can do when leaders are never told no. This is not just the story of one man. It is the story of a global system where weapons pass from hand to hand, where alliances silence conscience, where power excuses atrocity. And until we change that system, until we stop confusing vengeance with justice, there will be more names, more funerals, more silence. This was True Crime After Dark, and some crimes cast shadows across nations. Stay awake, stay aware, and never stop asking who is giving the orders.